एक विश्वसनीय पार्टनर के रूप में एनर्जी, रेलवे, वाटर, टेक्नोलॉजी पार्क्स जैसे क्षेत्रों में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट इंप्लीमेंट किए।
ואני שמח לבשר לכם בשורה גדולה. ישראל נמצאת במוקד של פרויקט בינלאומי חסר תקדים, פרויקט שיחבר תשתיות בין אסיה לאירופה. החיבור הזה יגשים חזון רב שנים, שישנה את פני המזרח התיכון, את פניה של ישראל, והוא גם ישפיע על העולם כולו. החזון הזה מתחיל בהודו, עובר דרך איחוד האמירויות.
India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor counter to China's Belt and Road Initiative. The most consequential announcement at the recently concluded G20 Summit in Delhi was the commitment to build a rail and port network that will connect India to the Middle East and the Middle East to Europe and the US. It has been named the India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor IMEC. Though no leader from the participating countries mentioned China, it is an obvious alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, that aims to connect the whole world to China through shipping, rail and road networks. Though intense negotiations, led by Deputy NSA Vikram Misri, were held between the four countries and other stakeholders since early last week to seal the deal, as reported by ET, the IMEC was not something that was hurriedly cobbled up at the G20 Summit. Its genesis lies in a forum created nearly 2 years ago in October 2021 called I2U2, comprising India, Israel, the UAE and the US. The Saudi Arabia was later made part of the grouping. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval is the man behind crafting this mega infrastructural project, as he had been in negotiations with his counterparts from other participating countries, especially American NSA Jake Sullivan, for past several months. The I2U2 is a grouping of 4 nations, which came into existence in October 2021. The group consists of India, the US, the United Arab Emirates and Israel. The primary objectives of the group are to deepen the technological and private sector collaboration among the nations and tackle large-scale challenges. In July last year, the group issued its inaugural joint statement, affirming the 6 focus areas that member nations collectively agreed to prioritize. These key areas are water, energy, transport, space, health, and food security. The idea of IMEC emerged during talks at the I2U2 forum, and Saudi Arabia was included in this plan. I2U2 had emerged to counter China's rising influence in the Middle East. Nobody said it out loud, but it was about China from day one. A former senior Israeli official who was directly involved in early discussions on the issue had told American news portal Axios. It was Israel which raised the idea of connecting the region through railways during the I2U2 meetings. Part of the idea was to use India's expertise on such big infrastructure projects, especially railways. Doval and Sullivan at work. Doval met his American counterpart Jake Sullivan and those from the UAE and Saudi Arabia to discuss the infrastructural project in early May. The exact details of the meeting were not revealed, though in an anodyne statement, the White House said, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with Saudi Prime Minister and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, UAE National Security Advisor Sheikh Tahnoon bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and National Security Advisor of India Ajit Doval on May 7 in Saudi Arabia to advance their shared vision of a more secure and prosperous Middle East region interconnected with India and the world. Sullivan had hinted at this initiative during his speech at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy right before the meeting in Saudi Arabia. If you remember nothing else from my speech, remember I2U2, because you will be hearing more about it as we go forward, he said. Sullivan added the fundamental notion was to connect South Asia to the Middle East to the US, in ways that advance our economic technology and diplomacy. Sullivan said in his speech that one of the pillars of the Biden administration's strategy in the Middle East was regional integration. A more integrated, interconnected Middle East empowers our allies and partners, advances regional peace and prosperity, and reduces the resource demands on the US in this region over the long term without sacrificing our fundamental interests or our involvement in the region, he said. Doval and Sullivan had been meeting since early this year to prepare the ground for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's historic state visit to the US in July, which proved to be a landmark, with India and the US agreeing on deeper cooperation in the fields of business, trade, technology and defense. Doval had started preparing the ground for this visit much earlier, and in months of negotiations he built a momentum for various important deals between India and the US. President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi had announced on the margins of the Tokyo summit of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, Quad, in May last year the US-India Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, ICT, to elevate and expand the strategic technology partnership and defense industrial cooperation between the two countries. After that, Modi chose Doval to define and expand the initiative by negotiating with different stakeholders in the US. Doval and his US counterpart Sullivan had been shaping up ICT in the run-up to Modi's state visit to the US. The idea of an infrastructural corridor from India to the Middle East to Europe was also firmed up by them as they worked together on India-US partnerships. The IMEC will not only counter China's growing footprint in the Middle East but will also contain its strategic clout that it gains through business and infrastructural deals with other countries. With India expected to build the railways in the Middle East countries as part of the IMEC, it would also open up for India other avenues of cooperation with those countries, best earning India the reputation of a global infrastructure builder. The key role being played by Doval, India's topmost security expert, in shaping up the IMEC deal indicates that the infrastructural project is important for India from strategic and security aspects too, besides its economic benefits. Subscribe, like, share.